Hi, welcome to Escape into a Cause, the podcast inspiring Central Texans to turn good intentions into impact. I'm Stephanie Dyer, a philanthropic rookie, learning how to give back with a little help from my expert friends. Together, we'll share stories of local nonprofits, explore ways to connect, and encourage everyone to step up, unplug, and make a difference. Let's dive in and escape into a cause. Hey, Courtney.
Hi, Stephanie.
Later today, we are going to escape into Yellow Bike Project. They teach bike repair and promote sustainable transportation by empowering Austinites to build and ride their own bikes.
Very cool.
It's awesome. But first, we're going to talk about a very different topic, and that is gala or gala?
Oh, this is so funny. I don't know. If you're Vogue and you're talking about the Met Gala, I guess it's gala. We call it galas. I think tomatoes.
I would love to go around Austin asking gala or gala.
I think we're totally a gala community.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, these are typically annual events. They become part of a nonprofit's brand.
Yes.
And they become typically a signature event that fundraises.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, I think the reason I wanted to do this topic is because I actually thought galas were very pretentious and a waste of money for a long time when I was younger. And I would just see them.
Yeah.
Never went to one.
Right.
And I would see these people dress up. And I just thought, why doesn't the money just go straight to the nonprofit? And we'll dive into pros and cons. But Taylor Defoe of ArtNet, I don't know who this person is, but I liked their quote. He said, "One could describe them the same way that Winston Churchill famously described democracy. The worst option, except for all the other options that have been tried before."
It's so true.
What are your thoughts?
Oh, gosh. So many. I've been to many a gala, and I've been fortunate enough to chair several galas too for nonprofits in the Austin community. And listen, I think it's this clash of socialites and fundraising and nonprofits. And to your point, we discussed this on another podcast, another episode, but who cares what the motivation is if in the end it raises money and actually makes a significant impact? These are massive fundraisers for these nonprofits. For example, Casa of Central Texas, the executive director, Laura Wolf, is amazing and asked me to chair their annual gala, which is Casablanca. So it's a play on the movie. But to your point, it's very much part of their image and their brand and Austin. People know about it. I also think about Dancing with the Stars, which is a massive gala with this fun little activity, the dancing competition for Center for Child Protection. But they are the events that some people, that's all they know about the nonprofit is, oh yeah, they also have these galas. They are expensive when you talk about the overhead for these events.
Do you know what percentage should be the revenue that's brought in from the gala?
You're hoping for something around 35%, if not less.
That's what it should be.
That's what it should be.
But we just talked earlier about a golf tournament that the revenue and expenses were the same.
The golf tournaments make no sense. I'm just going to say it out there.
Glad someone said it.
No, don't do the golf tournaments. They're just not profitable.
Go do the golf tournament for fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Austin is a good town to do a gala in because there's so many ballrooms. We're a big tourist town, and so we do have a lot of hotels that partner very well with the nonprofits. And they do have a nonprofit rate for everything from the catering to the florals to the actual event space. But you need these big ballrooms that hold 1,000 people. You fill it with Austin's social scene.
The Junior League of Austin, even when people are renting that ballroom,
That's right.
it goes back to another nonprofit.
Yes. So always consider if there's a way to do that. If you need a smaller venue, but for the thousands that need the JW Marriott or the Omni Barton Creek has been really popular. Then this is what you do. And they follow a very similar agenda. You go in, there's usually a silent auction. There's usually a VIP time too, because that's a ticket that you can sell at a higher price. Then you've got the main event, which is a dinner. The dinner usually includes a live auction. Do a really good live auction. You need a lot of people in the room. And then there's usually a component of, hey, if you didn't win a live auction, let's raise the paddle. And that's just straight donations to the organization. And then there's usually a dance floor at the very end. There's also some games. So they'll do a wine toss or they'll do a pick a package or things like that.
I think the last one at the EEF gala was just a coin toss.
Yes.
And everyone stand up if you want to put $50 towards the coin toss and one person would win. A fantastic example of throwing money for fun and it goes straight to the nonprofit.
That's right. And so I do think it's effective. And especially if this has become part of your identity as an organization in Austin. Creating one from scratch is very difficult to do because you almost have to guarantee that, again, 1,000 people will be in the room.
There's a formula.
There is a formula, and you have to be really good at knowing what it is and being able to come up with the numbers that you need in order to have that 70%, 30% ratio.
Yeah. And what I've thought about in the past, which has been noted in my research as well, is there may be an ethical dilemma for some of these galas, and that does it contradict the intentions or mission? When you're raising for basic needs, homelessness, disadvantaged population, and there's this grand gesture of decadence, is that contradictory to what you're trying to do? We know that these galas generate awareness, they create interest, they build engagement, they raise money, they cultivate donors for tomorrow. But there's this question, especially with COVID happening, that some people transitioned away from galas. But there's the no-go gala. Pros and cons of both of these that I've seen. I think one of the pros of an in-person gala is they do usually do a really great job of creating awareness of what the nonprofit does.
They do. And to your point, this disconnect between what is the nonprofit's focus and what is this night of elaborate dancing, feasting, and decor and dress up. There's usually a mission moment during these galas. So they do try to do the reason you're here, the reason you dressed up, the reason we're enjoying these festivities is because, and they'll usually have a beneficiary come up and speak at the front and tell their personal story. For example, CASA brings up the judge who sits in the court and sees the advocates advocate on behalf of these children that have no other voice for them. And you really do feel this sense of a unity within the room of 1,000 people and a reminder of why we're here.
And sometimes they don't have to be as decadent, right? There's galas of all different.
Absolutely.
Like there's the luncheons even. And so there's different versions of this.
I know. Pop-Up Birthday, just on that note, which is another great nonprofit here in Austin, and their office is in Westlake, and they create birthday boxes for children in the foster care system. But they call theirs the Ungala. Their whole concept of their fundraising event is to make it feel less like a gala and more of a casual event, and to actually be the antithesis of this dress up, spend $850 on a plate sort of thing. And that really works for them and their brand.
Yeah, Generation Serve, I know that Stephanie was talking about how they bring an activity so everyone can do an activity that the youth are usually doing. So that engages you, that gives you that feeling for the cause, and hopefully brings in more reoccurring donors in addition to the revenue that it generates, which the more I'm talking to some of these smaller nonprofits, even Carrying Hope, they said that sustains them for the year.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not as pessimistic as I once was. There are pros and cons, and I feel a lot better about dressing up and attending these and having a good time while raising money and awareness for a good cause.
Yeah, it's just a vehicle by which these organizations can earn their budgets for the year.
The same way that Winston Churchill famously described democracy. Seems like the best option on the table.
That's right. It works. And why fix something that's not broken for them? And I think those that do it successfully are extremely successful with them.
Thanks for chatting, Court.
Thanks, Steph.
We'll be right back. Escape into a Cause is sponsored by Nightlight Insurance Agency. You know how a nightlight gives you comfort and peace of mind in the dark? That's exactly what Nightlight aims to do. Guide you through life's uncertainties with personalized insurance for your home, auto, business, and more. Nightlight Insurance strives to provide its clients the best coverage at the best price without sacrificing on customer service. Here's what one client had to say. Nightlight was able to lower our car insurance significantly, answered all our questions, and returned our calls promptly. Very professional, would highly recommend. So it's no surprise Nightlight has a 5-star rating on Google. Nightlight also makes this podcast possible by covering production costs so all other sponsorship dollars and gifts can go directly to nonprofits and volunteers. And as part of their mission to give back, Nightlight proudly donates $1,000 to every nonprofit we interview. If you are a sponsor interested in giving back to our podcast, please find us on social media and let us know. Nightlight is an agency focused on personalized service and giving back. See how much you could save and how good it feels to have peace of mind by visiting nightlightinsurance.com. Today, we are escaping into Yellow Bike Project, and we have Pete Wall, the store manager and bike mechanic, and Jim Robertson, a board member. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
I'm really excited to talk about Yellow Bike Project. This is a fun nonprofit to chat about, and the mission is really great. So looking forward to it. First, what is Yellow Bike Project?
We're a nonprofit. We operate a community bike shop over at 12th and Weberville Road. And our mission is built around the belief that bikes can play a powerful and transformative role in people's lives. And we live out that mission in two forms. One, we teach people about bikes. If somebody comes into our shop and says, I have a flat tire, can you show me how to fix it? We'll help them with that. If somebody comes in and said, hey, do you have a class? I want to take a class about repairing gears on a bike because mine aren't working right. The answer to that is yes, too. If somebody comes in and says they want to build a bike from scratch and they've always wanted to do that, the answer to that is yes. And then finally, if somebody comes in who already knows how to repair a bike and says, I'd like to work among a group of like-minded people and put my skills to good use, the answer to that is yes, too. So that's our first mission, is teaching people about bikes. The second part of our mission is giving bikes away. We take bikes that have been donated to us, and that's one way people support Yellow Bike, is just by donating a bike. And then using both some of our staff and a lot of volunteers, we repair those bikes, make sure they're in working order, and then we give them away to people who would otherwise not have access to a bike. That might be an adult for whom that bike would be a way to get to ACC to take a class. It might be an adult who's new to the country and is just getting established in Austin and needs a way to get to a job interview. Or it could be a child whose family can't afford a bike, and that bike could be a first bike for that child and open up a whole world through bicycling.
So bike literacy and access to bikes. I know that there's a lot of impact we're going to go into in just a moment. Pete, did you want to speak about what community is served?
Let me go all the way back to the beginning for a quick second. When we first started the Yellow Bike Project, we were inspired by some radical students who got elected to the government in the Netherlands in the 60s. And they had a program where they were going to buy 20,000 bikes and just put them out on the street for anybody to use. And we were inspired by that. So our idea was to take bikes that nobody wanted, like that people leave out at bulky pickup or something like that, and fix them up and paint them bright yellow and put them on the street for anybody to use, sort of as like an interactive advertisement for bicycling itself. And that inspired us and inspired a lot of people to come around.
You did this here in Austin?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
starting in 1997, and the last yellow bikes were released to the streets in 2012. But over time, we've evolved into some discrete programs because the yellow bikes, to be honest, were a failure. They all disappeared. We put thousands of them on the street and they all vanished. Or the bikes were breaking down and not getting maintained. Definitely some people were covering over the yellow paint with another color, which also helped us to evolve the program because we saw that happen and realized, okay, there are people who need bikes and a public bike is a cool idea, but if you ride a public bike to the store and then you go shopping and you come out and someone else rode it away, then you're stuck.
Uh-huh.
We had one guy, one of our volunteers is like, your slogan should be ruining paint jobs and stranding people.
Oh. Then that once they said that, you're like, this is a failure. We need to change
Well,
our...
it definitely gave you some perspective.
Yeah, no, I love that. Okay.
To put it another way, we found out that people really like bikes.
Yeah. We evolved into different programs over time because the idea that we had was cool, but it wasn't successful. So in order to get people on bikes directly, to what we do now is we partner with existing nonprofits that are already doing social service work. And we augment their programs with our specialty, which is making bikes. So essentially, if you're a caseworker or a social worker at any nonprofit in Austin, you can call us and say, can I get a bike for my client? And we'll provide a bike, a lock, and a light and a helmet. So that way the person can have the bike of their own and rely on it instead of just leaving it somewhere and watching it disappear like the original yellow bikes used to. If we had done our research more thoroughly, we would have discovered that program in the Netherlands was also a failure.
Oh.
But we didn't complete our research. We just got inspired by the idea and went with it because we were a bunch of young people who didn't know better.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I think a lot of companies wouldn't be founded if they went and did too much research, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, well, then the communities that are served, is it here in Austin?
We're focused in Austin. We serve this whole central Texas area. We work with, for example, the Hays County Mental Health Court, and we've worked with the Georgetown Free Bike Project and a library in Jonestown, so somewhat far-flung. But we started in Austin, and we're focused on Austin because we believe that we need bikes here as much as anywhere in the world.
I have a few fun facts I found out about bikes. You guys might already know these facts, but one of them ties nicely with what you just let us in on. We'll see if you guys actually know these. Okay, you ready? I know y'all weren't expecting this.
No, this is exciting.
Okay, Susan B. Anthony said, blank have done more to emancipate women than anything else in the world.
It's a leading question. It's obviously bicycles.
Bikes.
Yeah, I do remember that Susan B. Anthony quote.
Yeah, I love that.
It's a great one, yeah.
I think you'll be able to get, what is the country that has more bikes than people? And it's notorious for this, I
I would
guess.
say
It's
Netherlands.
the Netherlands. Yeah.
That is the Netherlands. That's what I thought was interesting, that you were inspired by the Netherlands. 27% of trips are made by bike. It's the highest rate in the world. Okay, last question. What is the longest tandem bike that actually worked? So fits how many people? So if we were to try and break the world record at Yellow Bike,
I would have to be guessing here too, but I'm going to say 21.
35 people.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Yeah.
35 people strung out all along one bike.
Is
Bet that bike
60
weighs a
feet or
ton.
something? Do y'all want to try for that? You want to go for 36?
Ooh, that would require some welding and
That bike's going to weigh a
but
ton.
we've got some welders.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's switch gears and talk impact and numbers. We talked about the two missions, bike literacy, bike access.
I'll talk about impact in numbers one way. Impact to me is almost more powerful if you put it in the context of like a single person. What might a bike that we give away mean to that person? Pete mentioned we work with dozens of partners who are in the social services world. One of our partners is Casa Marianella, and they do amazing work providing housing and services for people who have immigrated to this country, typically under really trying circumstances, maybe having to flee violence or some other reason to flee a foreign country. They land in the United States. Oftentimes, if they're lucky, they end up at Casa Marianella. They're one of our partners in the sense that when they have somebody who comes in who obviously doesn't own a car, may not yet have a driver's license, may need to get somewhere that's not served by bus and doesn't have the money for Uber or anything like that. A bike that we give to them with, as Pete mentioned, a light, a lock, and a helmet might mean them getting to their first job interview, might mean getting to a language lesson to start learning English so they can assimilate into our society. That bike could transform their early experiences in our country. So that's how I would describe an impact on a particular individual level. On a broad level, we do that kind of thing, giving bikes away sometimes over 1,000 times per year. In other words, that's the number of bikes we get out there. It varies from year to year, depending on how many bikes we get in, the volunteers we have working. It took a little bit of a slump during COVID, but we're back rolling again now, and we get over 1,000 bikes back out on the street every year. We do that, and I should mention this, not only do we have a small staff, but we do that with a lot of volunteer labor. In 2024, we had 711 unique volunteers who donated a total of 8,960 hours to Yellow Bike. And those are the people who help teach those classes. They help make a kid's bike workable so we can give it away to a kid for their first bike. They may be the one who repairs a bike and it goes to that immigrant I described. So that's both the sort of micro and macro version of the impact we make on our community.
You just hit on the fact that some of these beautiful stories come through the donations. I looked at your 2023 impact and it said 1,700 bikes, 500 sold, 1,200 donated.
We hit that kind of number most every year. It varies a little bit from year to year for various reasons, but that's not atypical for us.
I loved the breakdown of out of those 1,200 that were donated, 900 were adults that have gone through difficult life situations and 300 children. So good combination, like you said, access. So affordability, bikes give affordable option to get to places. Pete, did you want to talk a little bit more about the impact?
One of the reasons I really love being part of this organization is because the good that bicycles do is so universal. Like it's literally the cheapest way to get around. It's the most efficient form of transportation ever invented. It's accessible to people who have balance. You know, it doesn't take a lot of skill to ride a bike. It doesn't take a lot of money to ride a bike. It can save the world, honestly. If we could get people to ride bikes as much as they drive cars, then we wouldn't be facing nearly as dire a situation with climate change. The traffic congestion would be less bad. The air pollution would be less bad. Asthma rates would be lower. People would be healthier. The city would be cleaner and quieter and a more friendly place for us all to be. So that is really the basis of it. And the impact that we have with our organization is small, but it's important.
What I love about Yellow Bike Project is it's one of those that you can volunteer and have some serious self-serving benefits. It's healthier, it boosts your mood. It's been known study after study to show that it reduces anxiety, stress, depression. I even saw some studies improves focus and memory.
Yeah, I can guarantee you, based on my own experience, and I commuted back and forth to work for many years. I'm retired now, but the days where I biked to work, I know I was in a better mood. I was more productive. And the days I biked home, I think my wife would vouch for me that I was a better husband and father as a consequence of having gotten a little exercise and been outdoors on the way home.
Bikes make better husbands. That's a pretty good slogan.
Pete, you have some good slogans. Okay, that's great. I love it. And then you'll have a lot of community partners you work with, lots of volunteer hours. We're going to talk about volunteering momentarily. And you already hit on this, Jim. Low overhead, somewhere around 95 cents on the dollar just goes back to the mission. And vast majority of the work is performed by volunteers. Of course, Pete, you're in the shop and there's a small staff.
Yeah, we have a small staff, and their role is just to be like the backstop for everything, to make sure that the volunteers get guidance when they come in and to identify what bikes need to be fixed for which programs and so on. It's a really great operation as far as the way that volunteers and staff work together.
What if someone were to say, oh my gosh, it's been so long since I've been on a bike. I don't even know if I can ride a bike anymore, or maybe I've never ridden a bike. Do you have anyone that comes and they are nervous about getting on a bike, or most people going, I feel comfortable around a bike, I just need access to one?
We have a lot of people who come in who say that they haven't been on a bike since they were a kid. And so that's part of our role in the community, is to advocate for people to get empowered to get on a bike. A lot of times it just takes a little bit of encouragement and to test ride a few bikes with a low stress situation, and then people can regain their confidence. If somebody really has not ridden a bike before and they need some help getting on the bike and learning the basics, we have some community partners that we work with to do that. There's a group called Ride Bikes Austin that has a monthly ride for beginners, and we have some yellow bike loaner bikes there. So even if you want to get involved in riding, but you don't even have a bike at all, you can show up and just borrow one. And there's
Very cool.
another organization called the Gisalo Cycling Initiative that teaches people how to ride as well. So whenever somebody's that new, we direct them to our partners. And once they're ready to get a bike, they can come back to Yellow Bike.
Pete's answer reminded me of one of the other barriers to bicycling I've learned about since I've been involved in Yellow Bike. The bike world, I think, can be intimidating to women or people who identify as women. And it's bro culture. It can be kind of a bro culture, spandex and crazy shoes and all kinds of fancy equipment. In recognition of the fact that sometimes that in and of itself is a barrier to women and other folks who identify as feminine, we have specific programs oriented for exactly that population to really lower that barrier of people who say, I kind of like to be involved, but I always feel kind of threatened when I walk into a bike shop or I get invited to a group ride or something like that. So that's another barrier that we work to overcome.
So there's a space for women.
Every Monday night, we have a workshop from 6 to 9. It's called the WTF workshop. It stands for Women Trans Femme. So basically, it's a regular workshop where everything that we do happens. People learn about bikes, people fix bikes, people get instruction, but it's a no dudes allowed environment on Mondays.
I love that y'all are thinking about that. So that's very cool. I'll tell you that the last time I rode a bike, my company is headquartered in Australia. And so I had to go to Australia, and I did a few days in New Zealand with my colleague. And I said, let's go to the wineries. There's a shuttle. And she laughed at me. She's Irish. I said, no, I'm not going to be a tourist. And then I said, okay, well, what do we do? She said, well, let's compromise. Let's go do the bike tour from wineries. And I'll just say that I'm happy that by the third or fourth winery, they actually came and collected our bikes. Because a few wine glasses in, I'm like, they're going to come pick these up, right? And it was on an e-bike. And this was embarrassing. We had to call after like 10 minutes on the bike going, this is way too hard up these hills. And we realized our e-bike wasn't on.
Yeah, you get on a 55-pound bike, it's a little hard to get up the hills without the extra boost.
Does Yellow Bike deal with e-bikes, or is it mainly manual?
We do deal with e-bikes, yeah. They're more and more popular these days, and we started getting some as donations. One of the things about Yellow Bike that's funny is that we're behind the times because all the bikes we deal with are donated. So if some new fad is coming up and people are like, oh, do you have this thing? No. But 5 years from now, we'll have a lot of it.
Yeah, come back.
And so e-bikes have started filtering in, and we typically have some. Right now we have one on the sale rack, and we probably have a half a dozen that need servicing. And we have e-bike lessons too. Every month we have a class called e-bike troubleshooting. So if you have an e-bike and you want to learn how it works, or it's not doing what it's supposed to do, you can pay for that class and bring it in on a Sunday afternoon and have our e-bike expert walk you through all the connections and how to clean your outlets and all that stuff.
I'm just curious, how long have y'all been here, and how would you rate Austin in terms of being able to navigate via bike?
I've been in Austin since the early 90s, so a little over 30 years. And the ability to bike safely and easily around Austin has dramatically improved during the years I've been here. One of the things that bike folks have learned over the years is that you won't get the vast majority of people to get on a bike and conduct their lives via bicycles unless you provide a convenient and safe route to do so. The thought was if you put a stripe down on the side of a road, that would be sufficient to get people bicycling. And what the world has found out is that it actually takes more than that. So in the last 30 years that I've been here, there has been a tremendous increase in the construction of fully separated bike lanes throughout at least central Austin and extending fairly far out at this point. So I think it has dramatically improved.
I would agree with Jim. I got here in 95 and was told it was a bike friendly city. And at that time, it was still legal to park in bike lanes. And so I think that the city has made some big strides.
Yeah, that's so good to hear that even though Austin's growing, it's becoming more bike friendly.
And it just makes sense in so many ways. There just isn't room for everybody to drive in the central areas. And so every person who chooses to ride the bus or to ride a bike makes it easier for people who choose to drive too.
Absolutely. Public transit and biking helps everyone.
Yeah, we're all in this together.
Fantastic. Here we love to talk about stories that connect listeners to the nonprofit. So is there a story that either of you can share that can connect listeners to Yellow Bike?
I'm sure Pete and I could go on and on with stories. I've been on the board of Yellow Bike for almost 2 years. And I have to say, having served on the board of some other nonprofits over the years, it took me a little while to get used to Yellow Bike. The boards I had served on were a little more hands-off from the operational aspect. We did the traditional board stuff of governance, ensure we were crossing our T's and dotting our I's, and we did some fundraising and so forth. But Yellow Bike, being a board member, is more hands-on. So I was a little lost and baffled for the first few months. And then came our holiday bike giveaway, where we give away somewhere between 100 and 200 bikes to children. And I can't even tell you how that bolstered my enthusiasm for Yellow Bike. There was a line of super excited children, anywhere probably between 4 and 14-ish. And they were lined up, and we had a bike for every one of them, and a helmet and a lock and a light and so forth. Some of them were getting their first bike and were beyond excited to get their hands on a bike that was going to be their own. A few of them had never ridden a bike, so you had parents running down the sidewalk, pushing their children, trying to keep them upright. I'll never forget, it's burnt into my brain, an image of a cute young girl. I bet she was 8 or 9, red dress, just with this smile painted on her face, to be handed a bike that was going to be her bike. That's the kind of impact we have, and it certainly bolstered my enthusiasm for being involved in this effort.
Those kids' bike giveaways are a beautiful experience for everybody.
That's incredible. I can still remember my dad teaching me to ride a bike and going down the street. Those are such great memories. And the fact that Yellow Bike is able to provide those memories for other families that maybe couldn't afford them, that's great. Pete, do you have a story to share?
One story I like to tell is about the community cycles in Seguin, which, if people don't know where it is, it's a little bit east of San Antonio on I-10. It's on the Guadalupe River. We got a call from some people in Seguin who were interested in our mission, and they wanted to come and do a tour. So they came up and I showed them around, and it turned out that they wanted to start their own community bike shop in. So they were a group of people who were an offshoot of the Lutheran Church, which apparently a few years ago had a split among its memberships. The church itself had a vote to ban LGBTQ people from their membership in their flock. But some of these Lutherans wanted to be inclusive of everybody. So they split off and formed their own group. And they did some fundraising, and they bought a defunct school, and they turned the gymnasium into their sanctuary, and they turned the classrooms into different, like a nonprofit incubator. And so they came to us looking for some guidance and some inspiration about how to start a bike project. And they were really enthusiastic, and it was super fun to show them around. And then we continued to collaborate, and we gave them access to our wholesale catalog. So we ordered them a whole bunch of tools so they could get going. And then I drove down there with a truckload and trailer load of bikes that needed to be fixed to give them like a little stockpile of bikes to get their operation going. And I got to tour their facility, and it was really just great to be like meeting people from another city who had the same mission and the same ideas. And it made me feel so great that we had enough resources to share with them.
Yeah, that takes on a different level of magnitude of the ripple effect. Because, of course, the people receiving the bike, there's that ripple effect, but you're helping a whole nonprofit in another space to do something similar to what you're doing here, which is really special.
Yeah, it felt great. And I would love it if every city could have their own community bike shop, because there are barriers to getting on a bike and we want to just break them down. But not every city has a place that recycles bikes and teaches people about them. Sometimes we get donations that are very valuable, and it's really surprising that somebody would give up something so nice, but we're able to pass it along to another person.
Do you have to market yourselves to have people bring in bikes, or do people just know and they just show up with their bikes?
We haven't really had to do a bike drive yet. The community knows about us. We were 28 years old now, so people know if you Google where to donate a bike, we come right up.
It's great. I know you were going to also, Pete, share maybe one more story.
About the at-risk adults.
Yes, tell us about at-risk adults.
A lot of people are familiar with the term at-risk youth, but not a lot of people know the term at-risk adult. And one of our volunteers coined it because it was used to describe himself. He was at risk of not riding a bicycle because he was an engineer for AMD and he had a BMW and he had a fine life set up. He was educated and had a good job, so he didn't need to use a bike to get anywhere. His car broke down and he decided, he's not a one-dimensional guy, he's not just an engineer. He decided he wanted to start biking to work. So he came to Yellow Bike and he did the Earn a Bike program and he built himself a bike and started riding it to work, which is wonderful. And then he was excited and he brought a friend and then he brought another friend and they all built bikes together. And after a while of seeing him at the shop, I took him aside and reminded him that it's a volunteer-based organization and that helping yourself is great, but helping other people is really an important part of what we do. So I successfully recruited him to be one of our best and longest term volunteers. He also wound up quitting AMD because they moved to a far-flung location. So he was unemployed for quite some time and devoted a lot of time to Yellow Bike. And then after he found a new job, he wound up working for the city of Austin in the transportation department. And now he's responsible for administering the bond funds that create bicycle infrastructure. So I feel like that's a real success story where we took somebody who could have been in a car his whole life. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but living a regular suburban lifestyle and not being on a bicycle on a daily basis. And now he and his whole family ride bikes.
I talk about the topics that matter at the beginning of each episode, and we talk over and over again about how many people go in for self-serving purposes to either volunteer, whatever it may be, whether you're donating or volunteering. But once you do it, and then you do it again, and then you start getting closer to the impact, it doesn't matter that it's self-serving, because the more you do it and the more you get involved, the more you realize how fantastic the impact and the mission is, and you get more involved. And I think that's a great example where maybe he wasn't thinking about really helping others with bike access or educating others on bikes.
Now he thinks about that all the time.
Well, I think
Absolutely.
Yellow Bike is consistent with what a lot of people say about various forms of volunteerism, which is I went into it because I wanted to give a little bit of myself to some cause, but I got out of it so much more than in fact I gave. I think people experience that at Yellow Bike.
Absolutely. Let's switch gears. I want to hear a good brag. A good brag is just something not related to the nonprofit, and it's to inspire others to go do something good. Pete, I know you have a good brag for me.
A friend of mine is trying to buy her first house, and she doesn't have quite the financial situation she needed. And so I loaned her some money to make sure that she could sign those papers on the day that they were ready. And she actually did. She called me 2 days ago and told me that she signed the contract.
Congrats to her. That's really exciting. That's amazing. I don't know if anything can top that with your next one, but let's hear it.
Well, this one is just a story about me being a good friend. So I have this buddy named Mike. He's my oldest friend. We met when we were 11. And when he was 46, he had moved to New York City with his girlfriend because of a job that she got. And he was struggling a little bit to find some work, but he found something that was about to come through, but their relationship ended. And so all of a sudden he was in New York City with no job, and he couldn't pay the rent on the apartment after she moved out. So he moved back home, and he was living in his mom's basement again, which he did for a little while after college. But when you're 21, maybe it's a little different than when you're 46.
It hits different in your 40s, I'm sure.
Yeah. So it was a low point for him. So
Yeah.
I called him up and I said, hey, man, I'm going to buy you a plane ticket. Come to Austin, and I'll take some time off from work. And I flew him down here, and we drove out to the Big Bend National Park, and we went on a camping and hiking trip. And I think that a little trip out to the desert is always good to clear anybody's mind, but I think that really helped him to feel better about his situation.
I love that. So many good brags. People start thinking about, oh, where else have I volunteered or what else have I done? And I think it's just being a good friend, being a good parent, talking about something you've done with your children to put more positivity in the world. And I really loved both of those. I don't know, Jim, did you?
I'm not sure even this is a brag because it feels overreaching to brag about it. But my wife and I had the opportunity over 10 years ago to meet a woman at Casa Marianella, which I mentioned earlier. We were doing some volunteer work there, actually cooking a meal. And we met a woman. She had had to flee the Central African Republic when people came into their house with machine guns and started shooting the place. She and her husband had to flee in two different directions, I mean, literally across the globe. And she ended up in the United States at Casa Marianella. And to make a long story a little less long, my wife mainly and I helped her out along her journey of getting a job, finding a place to live, ultimately through years and years of really hard labor by a whole bunch of people. She got her green card and became to permanent status in the United States. She had two young children at the time, and time goes by and she moved out to California, and then she recently moved back to Austin. And she is the most resourceful person I just about have ever encountered. But she recently came back to Austin and she's found a place to live, but she had no car. And because of the high price of housing in Austin, she and her two children live way out at a Bastrop, so beyond probably bicycling range. So I couldn't help her with the bicycle, but we were able to help her go shopping for a car. And she bought an old car. It was a sort of intimidating environment for her. And we walked her through that, and we found some really friendly people who could help her with the car. And she's one step farther along now to just becoming this incredibly productive member of our community and our country.
That is such a good brag. I'm inspired by both of you. Now that you've both shared your good brags, let's give listeners chance for bragging rights. I know there's two main things, which is volunteering and donating. Pete, you've said, what are the requirements to volunteer? A good attitude.
A good attitude is one of the most important things that you can bring if you're volunteering. The other essential ingredient is patience. That's all you need to come to volunteer at Yellow Bike. We provide all the tools, all the guidance. We have all the materials that you need. You just have to show up with the willingness to ask questions and get your hands dirty.
Yeah, easy. And no age requirements.
Yeah, it's definitely all ages, all genders. Anybody is welcome. It's a family-friendly scene. It is a workshop, and there's work to be done. The ideal volunteer for us is somebody who wants to show up regularly for a long time. We have a corporate team building program that people can sign up for and bring groups in, and that's always a good time. But to really make an impact as a volunteer at Yellow Bike, we want you to give us a commitment a lot of time. So if you want to get busy and get your hands dirty, then that's all you need.
So volunteer, who can help? Anyone with a good attitude and patience.
Beyond volunteering, it does take money to conduct our mission. We have a pretty substantial, fully functional, fully equipped bike shop, which costs money. We do have some staff that devote their time to our mission. You can help Yellow Bike by donating. Probably the easiest way is if you just go to austinyellowbike.org. Right on our homepage, there's a button you can click donate. May is National Bicycling Month. That's something that's been celebrated around the nation now for 50 or 60 years. The whole month has a whole series of bicycle-related events nationwide and here in Austin. May 16th is actually Bike to Work Day. That whole week is Bike to Work Week. We'll be actually celebrating our 28th birthday, we being Yellow Bike, during May. And we're going to be conducting a fundraising event. It'll be done mainly online. So if anybody wanted to participate, they could just go to our website and indicate their willingness to do so there. So volunteering and then donations are always welcome. And as I mentioned, if you've got a bike gathering dust in the garage, we'll take it. We have a pretty large supply of bikes ready to be repaired right now. Certainly volunteering and helping us out on the skills is super welcome right now.
Yeah, we're always looking for help in the main three areas. Give us your time, give us your bikes, and give us your money.
Love it. Easy. I know May 3rd also is a movie event at Carter Library. Did you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, there will be some more information on our newsletter and our social media, but we're going to kick off Bike Month with a film about an Eritrean bicycle racer who made it from a rough situation of poverty and isolation, not to mention dealing with racism and bureaucracy, but he did wind up doing the Tour de France. And there's an inspirational documentary about him that we're going to screen at the Carver Library branch in East Austin on May 3rd at 10 a.m. And there's going to be a bike ride as well, hosted by the Black History Bike Ride people and the Major Taylor Bicycle Club.
Incredible. Thank you both. I really appreciate it. I loved chatting about Yellow Bike. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, listeners. Do you remember your first bike? For some of us, it was our first taste of independence. The moment we realized we could get somewhere on our own. For others, it was a necessity because we couldn't drive or couldn't afford a car or just needed a way to get back to work, school, or anywhere but where we were. That's the kind of impact Yellow Bike Project is making every day. Jim and Pete joined us to talk about their mission to build a stronger, more connected Austin by putting bikes into more hands and teaching people how to care for them. Since 1997, they've helped create access to joy, freedom, and reliable transportation without barriers. They offer ways to earn a bike, donate one, or buy a refurbished bike. Since our interview, we have already donated 2 bikes, one of ours and one from a neighbor who is ready to let it go. Is as simple as a post on our Facebook neighborhood group. And if you're around on May 3rd, don't miss their Bike Month kickoff. You can find all the details at austinyellowbike.org/events. Also, quick correction. Last week, we said we'd be escaping into Austin Soundwaves this week. Oops, we got excited. But both Yellow Bike and Austin Soundwaves build community, bring joy, and create magic for young people. Yellow Bike just happens to serve at-risk adults too, which, as Pete joked, includes anyone not riding a bike. So if you like this episode, I guarantee you'll love next week as we escape into Austin Soundwaves. So here's how you can earn your bragging rights: earn a bike, donate a bike, buy a bike, post about it. Someone's next ride might be hiding in your garage. Mark your calendar for May 3rd and show up for Bike Month kickoff. Also, wanted to add our Topics That Matter segment, where Courtney and I looked into golf tournaments and galas, and here's the short. We weren't wrong about golf tournaments. They typically raise significantly less than a gala, on average about $5,000, and as much as $300,000 if they're on the PGA Tour. It's actually in the millions. So there is some good. Go and have fun. Of course, galas more commonly net between $25,000 and $1 million, especially with strong planning and support. So you have PGA Tour events like the Principal Charity Classic, which raised $8 million, powered by major corporate foundations. And over on the fashion front, Met Gala, as Courtney reminded me, raised a record-breaking $26 million in 2024 to support the Costume Institute at the Met, which I've actually never really understood what they raised money for. But it's not just about celebrities and high fashion. It curates exhibitions and acquisitions preserving fashion history. If you're a nonprofit and you're planning a fundraiser, Charity Navigator recommends keeping events costs to 30% or less of what you raise at those galas. And I now feel a little less skeptical. So put on the fancy dress, get on the heels, put on the tie, go show up for your local nonprofits and their galas. Because as much as this used to not make sense to me, a lot of funds are raised, so feel good about getting out and supporting causes you care about. Thanks to Nightlight Insurance for making this podcast possible and their donation to Yellow Bike. Thanks to Todd Thompson for editing and mixing, Graham Thompson and Jaden Dyer for the music, Corey McCain at Just Push Record Studios, and Ashlyn O'Neill for digital content management. Thanks again to Jim, Pete, and everyone at Yellow Bike for reminding us that sometimes the simplest tool, a bike, can carry us further than we imagined. I hope you join us next week as we escape into a cause.